The woman's back keeps moving, as if something is about to emerge. Then, her pupils begin to split. 2 different eyeballs are pressed together like peas in a pod. Then a crack appears on the woman's back. A younger, more beautiful body crawls out from within her. Welcome to this year's most bizarre cult film, Some Substance. The protagonist, Elizabeth. She was once a Hollywood star. As she ages, her stardom gradually fades. Now, she only participates in an aerobics program. Today is Elizabeth's 50th birthday. She has just finished work. Elizabeth sees the women's restroom is under maintenance. She walks directly into the men's restroom stall. The next moment, a producer walks in talking on the phone.
We need her young. How the old bitch has been able to stick around for this long.
The male producer mocks Elizabeth's age. He laughs and leaves the restroom. Clearly, he wants to find a newcomer to take over the show. In the evening, the male producer invites Elizabeth to dinner. He stuffs his face with food. The greasy corners of his mouth are disgusting. In the end, Elizabeth receives a notice of termination, along with a table full of food scraps. She drives home sadly. Elizabeth sees the billboard has been taken down. The next moment, she gets hit by a car. Fortunately, her body shows no abnormalities. At this moment, she sits in the hospital. She feels a bit overwhelmed. The attending physician reviews her records. He is about to wish Elizabeth a happy birthday, but unexpectedly, she bursts into tears upon hearing it. The doctor has other patients, so he apologizes and leaves. A young man remains in the room. He approaches to examine Elizabeth's spine. The young man says, "You are a very good candidate." Then, he tells Elizabeth to leave. Elizabeth noticed that the young man has red scars on his arm. As soon as Elizabeth steps out of the hospital, she pulls a USB drive from her pocket. It says Some Substance on it. The back has a string of phone numbers. There is also a message on the note. "It changed my life." Just then, a man interrupts her thoughts. His name is Fred. He is from the same alma mater as Elizabeth. The man excitedly said that he is a loyal fan. He compliments Elizabeth on her beauty. Then, he offers a date invitation. Elizabeth explained that the timing isn't right. "You can give me your business card." Fred tore off a piece of the medical record and wrote down his number. The note falls into a puddle. He quickly picks it up. The man hands the note to Elizabeth. Such a date invitation feels informal. After returning home, Elizabeth checks the USB drive. The USB introduced a black market drug called Perfect Substance. One injection can unlock DNA, creating a younger, perfect version of oneself. Moreover, the two will exist in a cohabitation state, taking turns to dominate the body each week. Elizabeth doesn't believe this nonsense. Then, she throws the USB drive into the trash can. In the evening, she goes to the bar alone. She watches the young and beautiful partners. Elizabeth gets drunk. She despises her aging face. Elizabeth reminisces about the past. Finally, she digs the USB drive out of the trash can. Elizabeth dials the number. She orders a set of Perfect Substance. The next day, she sees in the newspaper a recruitment ad for a fitness program. The age requirement is 18 to 30 years old. She irritably tosses the newspaper aside. Then, she flips through the letters she received today. To her surprise, there is indeed a package for Some Substance. A key card labeled 503. The person she spoke to yesterday mentioned an address. Elizabeth decides to give it a try. She heads to that mysterious address. Elizabeth walks through a small door. She casually swipes the key card. The rolling gate gets stuck midway. Elizabeth crouches down and crawls through. Then she proceeds down the hallway. A pristine white room appears. The items she purchased are in locker 503. Elizabeth looks through the tools and instructions. The most important point is, remember, you only have one. In fact, Hollywood gets new technology every few years. After all, celebrities fear becoming ugly the most. So she doesn't hesitate. Elizabeth extracts the solution and injects it into her arm. At first, there is no change. When Elizabeth thought she had been tricked, suddenly, she feels dizzy. Then she collapses to the floor and starts to convulse. The skin on Elizabeth's back begins to writhe. Soon after, her pupils split. The next moment, a young and beautiful woman crawls out from the slackened body. She stands in front of the mirror. Elizabeth cannot believe this person is herself. As for the aged shell, it lies on the bathroom tiles. Elizabeth comes to her senses. She stitches up the wound on her back. According to the instructions, Elizabeth injects the original body with a stabilizing nutrient solution. The next day, Elizabeth gets out of bed. She hasn't had enough time to admire her young body. Blood sprays from her nose. Elizabeth takes out the third set of syringes. She extracts a clear solution from her spine. These liquids are divided into 7 small compartments. She must inject 1 compartment each day. This is the only way to maintain the stability of the body. After finishing her preparations, Elizabeth decides to apply for the aerobics program. Her perfect figure and face. Soon, Elizabeth catches the interviewer's eye. She adopts a new name, Sue. The male producer is very satisfied with Sue. He decides to sign a contract with her. Sue makes an additional request. She wants to leave town once every week. She needs to take care of her sick mother. The male producer has no objections to this. He praises Sue for her filial piety. Such a girl will surely attract viewers. Sue's new program is quickly put on the schedule. She appears on the billboard once again. Elizabeth regains her sense of self. The 7 days pass quickly. Sue inserts a syringe into her wrist. The other end is connected to the second body. The 2 streams of blood flow and collide. Sue transforms back into Elizabeth. She returns to the TV station to collect her belongings. All the promotional photos on the wall are taken down. Elizabeth is being erased. The next day, she goes to locker 503 to retrieve the nutrient supply. She spends the whole day at home passing the time. Elizabeth finally waits for the switching time. Sue watches an ad for a massage device on TV, and the butt print on the sofa. She feels annoyed. She wants to erase these traces. Most importantly, she needs to find a place to store her original body. She can't stay in the bathroom every day. Sue repeatedly knocks on the wall. She finds a very thin wall. She breaks it open with a hammer. Then Sue begins her renovation work. The noisy sounds annoy the neighbors. He is about to get angry, but when he sees Sue's beautiful appearance, the neighbor's anger dissipates instantly. Sue explained that Elizabeth has moved out. Now she is the new tenant here. Hearing this, the neighbor happily says, if she needs help, he lives right next door.
Anytime. Day or night. Later.
Sue drags Elizabeth into the dark room after entering. Then she removed the photos from the wall. Her aerobics program has very high ratings. No one can refuse. Young and healthy beauties display their bodies, because Sue is Elizabeth. She has been an actress for many years. Her experience is richer than anyone else's. In short, Sue is destined to become a star. The male producer knows that. He has struck gold. Unfortunately, happy times are always short-lived. The 7th day is about to end. Sue changes into new clothes and goes out. She wants to enjoy her last moments. Late at night, Sue brings a young man home. She is having a great time. Elizabeth's nutrient supply has run out. Sue quickly starts to bleed from her nose. She pushed the man away and run back to the bathroom. Severe headaches wash over her like a tide. Sue is unwilling to return to the aging body. After hesitating, Sue makes a decision. Sue pulled out a solution from behind Elizabeth's spine. Then she injects it into her body. Sue becomes invigorated. She returns to the living room and entangles with the man. The man pulls down the zipper on Sue's back. Unexpectedly, the organs burst out. At the same time, Elizabeth in the compartment wakes up. The 2 bodies are forced to switch. She staggers out the door. Elizabeth sees the floor is littered with wine bottles and food. There is a note stuck to the glass, left by the man from last night. The note says, he got drunk and has already gone home. Elizabeth is about to tear off the sticky note, but she noticed her index finger has deteriorated. Not only is it shriveled, but it also has a purplish hue. Her hand looks like a dead person's hand. Elizabeth rushes to the bathroom to scrub it, but no matter how she scrubs, it's useless. She unties her robe to examine her back. Elizabeth discovered that the area where the needle pierced is red and inflamed. She feels a piercing pain just by touching it. Elizabeth feels helpless. She has no choice but to contact some substance. She wants to ask about the possibility of recovery from changes caused by drug abuse and overdose. If there's a chance of healing, Elizabeth explained that the other version of her got drunk, which led to this mistake. The person on the phone interrupts Elizabeth, saying, remember, there is no her in you. You are one person. As long as you respect the balance, there will be no inconvenience. He hangs up after saying this. Elizabeth angrily tidies up the place. Suddenly, her attention is drawn to the television. The TV is showing Sue's fitness program. Elizabeth watches her smile. Suddenly, she feels nauseous. Elizabeth turns off the TV. Suddenly, the doorbell rings. Peeking through the peephole, Elizabeth saw the neighbor. He has just finished watching Sue's new program. He rushes over to compliment her. The man wants to invite Sue to dinner. Elizabeth closes the peephole without saying a word. Soon after, the new supply box arrives. Elizabeth wraps her coat tighter and steps outside. Suddenly, she hears a strange noise. Elizabeth picks up the supply box and leaves. She walks into a roadside coffee shop. Elizabeth is afraid to take off her gloves.
It's long, isn't it?
Excuse me?
7 days.
Elizabeth then noticed the red scars on the man's hand. It turned out that this old man is the male doctor. At this moment, he accidentally drops his wallet. A key card labeled 207 falls out. There is also a scar on the back of the old man's neck. He came deliberately to see Elizabeth. The old man's purpose is to remind her that she is still worthy of existence, not to let her consume you. Elizabeth feels fear. She hurriedly ran out of the coffee shop. Elizabeth bumps into a man on a motorcycle. He is Troy, who went home with Sue. The man curses as he mounts his motorcycle and leaves. His attitude towards Elizabeth is harsh. Such tone pierces her heart. Elizabeth needs someone to affirm her worth, so she digs out Fred's number. She takes the initiative to contact her old classmate for a catch-up. They agree to meet at the restaurant at 8. The date makes Elizabeth feel invigorated. She picks out a dress to match her gloves. In fact, Elizabeth takes good care of herself, but Sue is just too young. In such a comparison of beauty, no matter how Elizabeth dresses up, it doesn't help. She gazes at the poster outside the window. Elizabeth suddenly loses her confidence. She repeatedly adjusts her makeup. The agreed time is approaching. Elizabeth loses the courage to go out. She looks at her reflection on the doorknob. Her face looks so ugly. Elizabeth rushes back to the bathroom to remove her makeup. She scrubs off the cosmetics from her face. She messes up her hairstyle. She falls into a state of self-loathing. Finally, Elizabeth sits in her bedroom. She ignores Fred's messages. A few days later, Sue regains control once again. She dances under the flashing lights. Sue performs various moves. Her face displays perfect emotional control. When she bends down, a bulge appears on her hips. When Sue stands up again, she returns to normal. Sue requests a reshoot. Unexpectedly, the control room said that they noticed something strange. Male crew members gather around the machine. They repeatedly check the close-up of her hips. This makes her feel extremely embarrassed. Sue takes the opportunity to run to the dressing room. She carefully examines her hips. Sue discovered a hard lump. She pushes it towards her lower abdomen, through the skin. Then Sue reaches into her navel. She digs out the hard lump. It turns out to be a chicken leg. In the next moment, Sue wakes up in the basement. Elizabeth is lying next to her. Her hands are still greasy. Sue puts on her pajamas and leaves the bathroom. She sees the table piled high with junk food. Among them is a roasted chicken. No wonder she had that strange nightmare. Sue throws away the food scraps. She calls some substance to complain. The balance simply doesn't work. Elizabeth will only waste 7 days. Sue hangs up without waiting for a response. She immediately disconnects the call. Sue adjusts her mood and heads to the filming location. She learned that the program has been cancelled. Sue feels upset. She goes to meet the producer. Sue is told that the show has received a huge response. The online aerobics videos cannot satisfy the public's curiosity, so the producer wants to send Sue onto the biggest online show to perform live in front of the audience. Sue won't miss this opportunity. So, she tears off the band-aid from Elizabeth's back. Sue pushes the syringe into the wound again. Once this situation occurs for the first time, there will be countless times after. Sue continually overdraws Elizabeth's health to maintain her new life. By the time Elizabeth wakes up from her slumber, her entire leg has deteriorated. Her arms are even more terrifying. Elizabeth looks as if she has aged 10 years. She reports to some substance. Elizabeth pointed out that Sue has disrupted the balance. The latter asked Elizabeth in return, "Do you want to stop?" If she is not satisfied, she can end the experience at any time. But the changes that have occurred are irreversible. Elizabeth looks at her deformed body. She has no choice but to compromise. She cannot stop under these circumstances. Her aging left leg is unusually stiff. After sitting for a while, she cannot straighten it. Elizabeth has to exert all her strength to straighten her knee. Only then can she stand up. Elizabeth takes out a package from the bookshelf. This is the farewell gift from the producer. On the day she left the production team, the package contains a cookbook. At this moment, the TV station suddenly mentions Sue. She has recorded a talk show. She enjoys the male host's adoration and compliments. Elizabeth watches the show while cooking according to the recipe. She mimics Sue's voice in a high pitch. Elizabeth mocks her behavior. Unexpectedly, the host actually mentions Elizabeth. He pointed out that their performance styles are similar. Sue immediately denies it upon hearing this. She mocks Elizabeth, saying she is already an old relic of the past. Elizabeth is furious. She imagines the turkey in her hand is Sue. Elizabeth thrusts into Sue's belly. She pulls out the intestines. Meanwhile, Sue on the screen continues to lie. She says her mother is a fan of Elizabeth. She watches her show regularly every day. So, to some extent, I grew up alongside her. My style would be influenced. Upon hearing this, Elizabeth vents her anger into cooking. She grabs an egg and throws it at the screen. She wants to tear off Sue's facade in front of the whole world to expose Sue's false front. Then, Elizabeth covers the windows with newspapers. She doesn't want to see the billboards outside. Elizabeth's mental state collapses. So when Sue regains consciousness, the whole house looks like it has been through a typhoon. The dining table is piled high with food. Sue is enraged by the scene before her. She doesn't want to be replaced by Elizabeth, so she frantically extracts Elizabeth's spinal fluid, one vial after another. There are no limits at all. For the next 3 months, Sue does not exchange with Elizabeth. Tomorrow, she will step onto her dream stage, reaching the peak of her career. In the evening, Sue goes to extract Elizabeth's spinal fluid. She found that there's nothing left to extract. She calls some substance for consultation. The other side informed her that the stabilizing agent has disappeared. This means that her journey is coming to an end. If she doesn't want it to end like this, she needs to switch to regenerate the liquid. Sue glances at the New Year show preview outside. She cannot switch at this critical moment, but she cannot refuse the reality of the situation. Sue collapses without the stabilizer. Before her consciousness fades, Sue crawls back to the bathroom to switch. The noise from the bathroom wakes up Sue's boyfriend. The man walks toward the bathroom. He is determined to uncover the truth. Elizabeth steps forward to lock the door. At this moment, she is no different from a monster now. She merely still has a human form. Elizabeth angrily slams against the door. She tells the man outside to leave. Her voice is different from Sue's. Elizabeth even makes a throat-clearing sound. The man doesn't have time to question. He grabs his clothes and leaves. Then Elizabeth steps out of the bathroom. She stumbles and falls to the ground. After a few steps, her bones creak as she moves. She makes up her mind to end it all, so she calls some substance to terminate the experience. Elizabeth drags the original photos back to the living room. Then, she wraps herself up. Elizabeth pushes the door open. She shoos away the neighbor, who is flirting with her. Then Elizabeth rushes out of the apartment building. She runs back to the 503 storage unit. The drugs inside can terminate the transaction. She hurriedly returns home. Elizabeth grabs Sue's feet and drags her to the living room. There is a note with a message from some substance. Sorry for not providing the best experience for the client. Elizabeth takes out a black syringe. She hesitates while holding the needle up. The voice from the phone echoes in her ears. Once you stop, there's no turning back.
On your own. On your own. On your own.
Elizabeth pushes the drug. She inadvertently sees the roses on the table. The card reads, "They will like you." Elizabeth remembers that dream and the years in Hollywood. She pulls out the unfinished syringe. Elizabeth realized that she cannot lose Sue. She cannot miss this important night, because Sue is the only part of her that is worth loving by others. Elizabeth takes out the double-ended syringe, but Sue's wrist cannot bleed to switch. She stabs it into Sue's chest. Elizabeth successfully awakens Sue, but this time, things are a bit unusual, because Elizabeth does not faint. The two seem to have become different individuals. Sue catches a glimpse of the syringe labeled "End" on the ground. She realized that Elizabeth wants to kill her. Sue angrily runs over. She kicks Elizabeth away with her foot. She grabs the monster's neck. Fortunately, Elizabeth grabs a vase and smashes it at Sue. The two chase each other inside the mansion. Elizabeth hides in the bathroom and locks the door. Sue is outside, violently kicking the door. She tries to brace the door with a cabinet. In the next moment, Sue bursts through the door. She grabs Elizabeth and slams her into the mirror until her face is a bloody mess. Elizabeth pushes herself out of the bathroom, but in the next second, she is kicked away. Sue looks at this ugly self. She feels immense anger inside. She frantically kicks Elizabeth. Sue wants to kill her, to eliminate the most shameful part of her life. When Sue comes to her senses, she is already soaked in blood. The live broadcast of the New Year show is about to start. She has no time to think and dives into work. After doing her makeup, she suddenly feels unwell all over. She rushed into the bathroom to cough and vomit. Sue spits out a tooth. she realized that her other teeth are also loose. With little effort, she can pull them out. Her assistant urges Sue to come out. The producer brings the shareholders over to introduce them. They are all men. Sue forces a smile without showing her teeth. At this moment, stylishly dressed backup dancers pass by. They successfully divert the men's attention. Sue darts into the stairway. Unexpectedly, her nails start to fall off. One side of her ear falls off as well. Sue hurriedly runs back home. She digs out that initial bottle of perfect substance. She injects the remaining drug. Sue wants to create a better version of herself. In the next moment, Sue collapses to the ground, her eyes splitting. After a wave of intense pain, something crawls out of Sue's body. That thing cannot be called human. It's as if Sue and Elizabeth were thrown into a pot and boiled until they are 7/10 cooked, sticking together. It's definitely the most cult scene in this year's horror films. The monster spits out a mouthful of green liquid. It pulls out a blue dress and puts it on. It stuffs jewels into its head, but no matter how hard it tries, it cannot change the horrifying visual effect. It cuts out a photo of Elizabeth. It sticks the beautiful face onto its head. Finally, the monster arrived on the New Year show stage. It drags its deformed body. It walks into the spotlight. She finally realized her dream. The photo on her face suddenly slips off. The audience emits screams like slaughtered pigs. Even a daring person rushed onto the stage. They burst the monster's body. However, the flesh-colored membrane continues to writhe. Blood sprays wildly. The amount of gore in this sequence is more than all the horror films combined. If interested, you can check out the original film. Ultimately, the monster is reduced to a pile of mush. Only Elizabeth's face remains, crawling onto the Hollywood star. Of course, the next morning, this pile will be swept away by the cleaners. The film ends here. It's definitely the best of the year. This year's most exhilarating horror film. Female director Coralie Fargeet gives her all. The performances of the two actresses are also outstanding, truly presenting a film that represents subversion and radicalism, with stunning audio-visual effects, with cyclical metaphors and satire, beauty, male dominance, and female competition, a variety of issues targeting women, ultimately shaping a pile of meat mush. The reviews will definitely be polarized, but as a horror film, it's absolutely bold and raw. If you enjoy my channel, please give me a subscribe.